afternoon. Welcome and thank you, Sabina. As you mentioned, I am Simon Jolliffe. Sorry, let me grab that. Simon Jolliffe, Inventory Manager for Harley-Davidson Europe. I'm here or been invited here today to talk about our supply operations, specifically about our procurement activities that subsequently transformed and had a massive influence on how we do business every day. So in terms of content, I've probably got more content than time, so I apologize, and I'll try and be quick, whoever's managing that. But I'm going to talk about Harley-Davidson Motor Company, who we are, what we do, really talk about our presence in EMEA, and a little bit more about our supply operations, what we look like. I'm going to talk about the business scenario that I was presented with when I was appointed as inventory manager, and then talk, or really just touch on, the supply chain management solution that we aimed to have. Then I'm going to talk through the actual initiative that we took with Tools Group and the results from that. The results from that. So. Since 1903, and as already mentioned, we've been fulfilling dreams of personal freedom with custom, cruiser, and touring motorcycles through riding experiences, events, and a complete line of Harley-Davidson motorcycle parts, accessories, and general merchandise. Our headquarters, or global headquarters, are based in Milwaukee, which is about an hour north of Chicago. And our annual turnover, or 2015 turnover, was 5.3 million. Now, the majority of that is generated through motorcycles, but it's not to say that our parts and accessories are what I'll call PAC, probably for the remainder of this. And our general merchandise, which is more about our riding gear and apparel, is not insignificant. We employ globally around 5,700 employees, and the majority, well, not the majority, but a lot of those are based in our US manufacturing plants. We have a dealer network, or at the end of 2015, we had a dealer network of 1,435 dealers that delivered new motorcycle retails of a little bit more than 264,000. Now, I thought it would be worth noting that in terms of our market share in the US, it's significant. We have a 50.2% market share, and hopefully this might help you understand why. Okay, great. Great footage. All of that footage from the video was taken in Europe. That was during a marketing campaign that was we called Discover More, and it was really targeted at the sport of touring, that is. So our headquarters in Europe are based in Oxford in the UK. We've been there since 2003 and have subsidiaries in France, Germany, Benelux, Italy, Switzerland, and Spain. In addition to that, we have sales offices in Prague, Moscow, Dubai, Athens, and Cape Town that support what we call our strategic or emerging markets. We have approximately 250 employees in our headquarters that support the dealer network of 378 dealers that delivered in the 2015 a little over 43,000 new motorcycle retails. Now in Europe, obviously a large majority of that, and we have a market share of 10.5%. Puts us in number 4 spot, slightly behind Kawasaki, but Kawasaki by, we can all boo, by 0.7 percentage points, then 4 percentage points behind Yamaha, with BMW leading the pack. But their market share is only 20.9%, but in comparison to the US is vastly different. We have our ERP solution is SAP, and we've had that since July 2009, and we continue that continue the rollout of SAP globally even today. We have a single distribution center in Belgium, and the 3PL services are provided by Neova Logistics from there. So our org structure, our operations, is a relatively simple structure. We have an S&OP manager that manages both the supply and demand of our motorcycle business. It's his responsibility to secure the volume of production required to deliver or ensure the right product at the right place at the right time. We have a marketing manager that is fundamentally responsible for the go-to-market activities and therefore the demand creation of our product for our pack and our GM business. It's my responsibility as inventory manager to support that, those demand-related activities from a supply perspective, with a balanced inventory strategy and plan. I've got 2, thankfully, very experienced supply chain analysts that report into me that have been with the company for a combination of, I think, 30 years. So really take on their experience that's helped me really deliver this project. So quite a small team, headcount of 3. We have no demand planners, which is a little scary. As I mentioned, I was appointed in April 2013. In terms of our procurement activities, 98% of the SKUs that we procure is actually procured through the motor company from the global distribution warehouse in Indiana. And talking about our GM, our general merchandise, 50% of that revenue is what we call our seasonal one-time buy product that's cut to order following biannual dealer meetings. So talking about our pack and what we call then our core GM business, we have, for the last few years, a steady active SKU portfolio of around 42,000 products. So the business scenario that I was presented with, and purely from a systems development perspective, our technical resources and funding was wholly focused on the rollout of SAP. There was no funding set aside to develop legacy systems. The legacy system that we had was a very basic replenishment solution that the business had quite a low confidence in. And the reasons for that was, of the weekly proposals that we were getting, we were only actioning a third of those without modification. A third of them were being modified, and then the balance of that was simply being deleted. It was not being actioned. The solution that we had some fundamental flaws. And really the capability gaps in the next generation of the supply chain management solutions that were then made available. So the flaws specifically was the data in which all recommendations were made were based on sales, or dare I suggest, dirty sales data, rather than cleaner demand data. And there was no seasonality in the solution that we had, or the legacy system that we had. An illustration of that is represented here where over the course of the year, the blue line represents our inventory over the duration of a year for our parts business. The green line represents the sales revenue that we saw over a 12-month period, so quite a lot of noise there and highly seasonal. And as a result of the static inventory, over the course of our peak season, we saw our service levels drop, which is the red line on the illustration. Subsequently, and to what Sabina said earlier, it's about walking the talk, it's about being customer-led in everything we do, and unfortunately the solution that we had at that time really didn't support that. When our legacy system was implemented, International as a business was much smaller than it is today. So when we look at 2005, we had international business represented 16% of our global motorcycle sales. By the end of 2015, the domestic market had shrunk by a third, and international as a region had grown or doubled up to 33%. And therefore, we're a much bigger player. We are fundamentally impacting the supply of product to the domestic dealers, which tends to generate quite a lot of noise out of our headquarters. My predecessor had independently surveyed the market for possible solutions, and at which time there was contact made with a company called Tools Group, and there was a feasibility study completed locally in Europe on one of the applications the application they offered, which was SO99, and I think a few people referred to that over the course of the day. Now, the feasibility study that we conducted, or my predecessor conducted, suggested that significant improvements could be saved, which you'd think you'd jump upon. Unfortunately, the pilot was pending US approval and had been there for approaching a year. I don't know the reasons for that. I suspect that a lot of that was the business was really looking for a SAP product, because we've obviously gone through this massive initiative of rolling and deploying SAP across our businesses, and then we were unable to find a product that was suitable. So the target solution that we were looking at was SO99. It is a demand-driven inventory optimization and supply chain management solution. It was to improve our forecast accuracy at a SKU level and reduce inventory. Now I say that, and I'll come back to that in a minute, while maintaining service levels up to 99%. The modules include that we were piloting were the statistical demand forecasting module, fulfillment, and replenishment, which collectively gave us greater functionality that we could really have ever considered at that time. So we were looking at having the possibility of planning promotions and or step changes in demand. We were able to look at or manage exceptional demand peaks and troughs. And also have the ability to look at what-if scenarios. I mean, as a business, we try to serve our dealer network well. They would probably not like to hear us say that our target service levels is around 90% as a first-time pick rate or line fill rate that we try to target. But one of the things the business couldn't understand was, what does an extra % cost? What does an extra 2% cost to the business? And how efficient can we be in providing those levels of services? The primary objective of what and why we were doing this was fundamentally to improve service levels to our dealer network and to optimize inventory rather than reduce it. Because of the resource constraints that we had given the initiative that we were doing with SAP, we were looking for a hosted solution without interfaces to SAP. And what that meant was we needed to collate and conduct this, or collate data and conduct the pilot through manual data extraction, which unfortunately I had to do. I did that for a 3-month period, ended up being for a little bit more than a year. So Mrs. Jolliffe wasn't particularly happy with me. I had to do it over weekends. But what it enabled us to do, we were able to look at a cost-effective pilot with very low technical risks. We were sharing this data purely through secure FTP servers, and didn't have any further requirement from our GIS organization. We'd outlined, we had specific and defined KPIs that we were going to monitor, that monitor the performance of our business, and also share with our steering committee that was based in the US, with the exception of one person. And kind of one of the final objectives that we have was, at that time, we didn't really understand what our future business needs were. We were told that there was X, Y, and Z that we could do, and further possibilities, but we needed to know what we didn't know. And we saw this as an opportunity to do that. In terms of the deliverables, we had quite an aggressive implementation plan. Scary when I look at it now. We looked at, and considering that I'd only just been in the role for about 3 months when this was happened, we needed to understand each other's systems architecture and design a solution within 1 month. And then deliver the actual pilot, or have the solution built for us within 2. So what that required was a high-level engagement from key stakeholders from across the business. We involved them early, and it was a key team of people. There were supply chain managers from the US. There were people. There was a person from our legacy solutions, so they understood what we were doing. We had representation from our global operations, and we had a local SAP consultant that really helped us understand what was possible. But throughout the pilot, what was paramount was that we remained, our focus was on a global solution rather than a local solution, because we had aspirations for this to scale up and be made available for all of our warehouses. So this may not mean a lot to a lot of people, but what I want to do is just to show what that file flow looks like. With the exception of the 2 actual tables within SAP, the rest of the data that's there is from standard SAP tables that we identified also that had interfaces and links to legacy systems that the rest of our organization's various ERP solutions looked at. So consultants may not like this, but obviously that's really what that is. That's how we base our pilot. What we also did is looked at revisiting the strategy that we had for stocking. So the thing that blew a few minds was that we looked at stocking, we did. Out of the gate, we changed our stocking criteria to look at, to reduce demand hits over a 12-month rolling period from 8 hits to 4 hits, which meant actually we're going to start stocking 4,000 more SKUs at the warehouse. At the time, I think we were on near on 14,000 SKUs with the legacy system that we were stocking, and we were going to jump up to close on 18,000, which I suppose raised concerns. Now, what enabled us to do that was the way purchasing logic or method. This is where we looked at reducing our A-class items and reducing the stocks that we were holding at the EDC, or the European Distribution Center, but ordering them more frequently, which in itself means that you have a better control on your supply chain. And the reverse of that for our C items, we were ordering less frequently but holding more at the EDC. Now, the new thing for us was actually looking at stocking to a service level target by category. Now, initially, this took quite a bit of effort to understand what those targets needed to be. And with any portfolio product, you have items of strategic importance, which I've just tried to illustrate there with our critical consumables. So the kind of things you would expect your dealer to have in stock, with the likes of when you have your bike or even your car serviced, the likes of having spark plugs, brake pad kits, air cleaner filters, batteries, oil filters, and fluids, and tires. What we wanted to do, and what we wanted to make sure that we were providing a high level of service to our dealer network with those items. So with this tool, we were able to do that. We targeted 99%, and with the solution that we had, you had and the optimization function, you had the ability to target but a service level, but to be able to say that I want it to be service level of 99, but I don't want any SKU within that portfolio of products to be less than 90%. Now, in doing that, it does constrain optimization, but out of the gate, or first time of using this was something that we were quite nervous on, that actually it was okay to be on back order for a few SKUs. Now, over the course of the pilot, we actually came off some of those minimum target service levels month by month, reducing that from 90 to 80 to 60, to the point where we removed the minimum service level to enable full optimization. Now, in doing that, that's when we started seeing greater performance from the solution. What we also did midway through the pilot is extended the ABC classifications to A, B, C, D, E, which we saw significant, obviously, improvements with, but more so from the volume of deliveries that we were going to start receiving for our operation. So by extending it to A, B, C, D, E from the legacy system, we reduced deliveries to our distribution warehouse by almost 94,000 delivery instances, which we've estimated savings of $750,000. So just to share with you some of the pilot results, and a common theme that you've heard throughout the presentations, that data cleansing, we probably underestimated what that was in terms of a task, but when we had actually completed that, we saw improvements even pre-pilot in our system's capability, because there was a greater level of integrity with the system itself. Immediately we saw improvements in our line fill rates. They immediately there was a step change. We saw higher line fill rates, and they were growing and being sustained, which is fantastic. So for the combined fill rate that we had for our parts, we were looking around 90%, and similar for our accessories, and we exceeded that. For our stocked parts, we were close to 95%, and for our critical consumables, we were more often than not actually exceeding 99%. Now, that isn't to say, inventory modeling itself, I don't know if you remember the previous slide, and you can always refer to this, back to this later. The actual inventory modeling looked great. What we had, and what I was trying to represent in the bottom graph there, is the blue line is our inventory, and the red line is our sales revenue. What we saw is a completely change revenue results, because we actually had stock in our distribution warehouse to support the sales. So the profile of that was different. However, it caused a lot of headaches for our finance community. What you saw was obviously inventory fluctuating significantly. Previously, it remained static at around 3 million, but in this example, we saw it flexing up to 4 million and reducing down to 2 million over the course of the year. So obviously, at the early stages of the pilot, when the business was focusing on what was going on, in their mind, they were thinking this is going to reduce inventory, whereas when they look at this in February and March, they saw the inventory is 30% higher than it was the previous year. So what we had to do is calm and put out some of the fires and the alarms that were going off across our finance community, and really start managing the expectations of them to understand that it was right. Our data supply is more stable, and we're able to better serve our dealer network. Now, that isn't to say that the project or the time of the project worked well. We were looking to do this over a winter period, and Unfortunately, Mother Nature stepped in our way at some point, and the polar vortex happened. So these things tend to happen, and we saw anything up to a 5-week delay in product coming out of the east coast of America. So, but that all aside, by September 2014, 7 of the 9 months that we'd seen, we actually realized our lowest level of back orders as a percentage of revenue for 5+ years. Obviously, we only had information in SAP back to 2009. So, which is fantastic. And equally, what we were actually starting to do is realize 5% more revenue per month as a result of this. Now, that also, because there was a greater confidence across our dealer network that we were stocking and availability was good, that facilitated sales growth across our region. An example that I can use would be that dealer networks, instead of looking for their local distributor of tires, they're actually looking, changing their dealer behavior. Instead of going and just putting that business to a local provider, they're actually looking at Harley-Davidson Europe to fulfill those demand requirements. Now, some additional highlights. By design, we had a truly scalable solution that, as of today, has been with SAP interfaces. I'm happy to say we have a live system in Europe. We have it across the Asia-Pacific region, where we have distribution warehouses in China, Japan, Singapore, and Australia. It's also present in Brazil, where they're managing the distribution warehouse there. It's even, some applause would be great, managing the domestic warehouse for the global distribution warehouse in Indiana. And in the coming weeks, we're also going to be rolling that out to Canada, which means that our entire distribution network will be using this model. Now, with the improvement in our 3 people's efficiencies, what that's allowed us to do is time to explore continuous improvement opportunities. I believe the previous person mentioned about vendor managed inventory. So that's something that we're looking at as a strategic portfolio of products where it's highly important that we don't run out of stock. We're also looking to expand our reach of direct procurement for our seasonal products. Today, or this year, we're going to be looking at procuring 80% of our seasonal one-time buy product directly from source. And in the next couple of years, by 2018, we're planning to make that 100% of our seasonal business, which improves our margin. We're also in the process of reviewing and implementing a new supplier onboarding process. So this is really about us, and I think one of the next slides I've got about the 5 rights of procurement, where one of those is the right quality of product. Though the end product, we're not talking about the end product there in procurement, we want to make sure that when we have a new supplier coming on board, that they know who the points of contact are, that we have pricing agreed, we know what Incoterms on, so on and so forth. So it's really improving our first-time success rate. That's really what that's going to be about. And equally developing our own resources. Now we've got time to develop our resources. Obviously, with that, you see improvements in employee engagement and boosts team morale. What we also built by design was that the previous restratification process in terms of the A, B, C, D, E, and what inventory we're going to hold, that was previously a biannual activity, whereas by design, it's now automated as part of the weekly batch process. And I suppose back to the other points that people have raised, as a product of this, don't expect it's going to go smoothly. Please expect that inventory is going to increase initially. With the tool that we had, you have the ability to proactively reduce back orders or even avoid them. But that kind of goes against what you're trying to achieve. So when you do those kind of activities, there you have the visibility. You're actually planning to have back orders by saying you're going to have the 10%. And one of the other things from the solution that we have, it does assume a perfect supply chain. And as we all know, suppliers are not perfect. Oh, wrong way, sorry. So some of the unexpected outcomes, though. What we're doing as a result of our team's increased knowledge and understanding of our architecture, there were customized SAP functions and transactions that we've actually redundant to requirements, and we've actually reverted back to standard SAP functionality, which has improved the integrity of our systems as well. The influence of this system has had a major influence on across our S&OP processes, to the point that in our monthly executive board meetings with our leadership teams and VPs of the company, they're actually reviewing the statistical forecast versus each region's aggregated or sales plans, which they love and hate us for. Because our leadership are now challenging our markets. If there's a gap in the plan versus the statistical forecast, they're trying to understand how we're going to fill that. And equally, if we have a sales plan that's below our statistical demand forecast, you've got it's likely that the region's starting to sandbag to make sure they deliver on the plans. We've also implemented a global inventory management team based out in Milwaukee. And they are using this system now to produce centralized KPI reporting, so they're able to compare region to region, business to business, which, unfortunately for me, we're leading the pack on in terms of our KPI results. The great thing from this is that the business is now making data-driven decisions, and that's being seen across our business, more than beyond just the immediate supply. So the user forum is cross-functional. We've got our product development teams that are using the data, so they're able to validate volumes and even consider the cannibalization of old parts when new parts are being forecasted, and they're representing that now in the system, so that when we're performing our replenishment activities, that it's truer as such. And as a result, there's a greater global awareness and role appreciation for what we do. And I've used that as an opportunity to improve and socialize what we see in Harley-Davidson as our typical purchasing cycle. We're really trying to help our go-to-market teams and our sourcing teams who reside in Milwaukee to appreciate what we're doing, to understand that procurement as a function are trying to deliver the 5 rights of procurement: right product, right price, right time, in the right place, and of the right quality. But what we as a team are trying to do is to improve our value-add contribution. So what we want to be able to do is expand our responsibilities and facilitate both the go-to-market teams and the sourcing teams in contract management. So we want to understand what the service level obligations are from our suppliers and start measuring them with KPIs. After all, what gets measured gets managed in terms of the supplier relationship. And in terms of that relationship, we want to be able to get involved in the development of those relationships, and start getting involved much earlier in the process than we have been in the past. And finally, what I'm hoping to be able to do is get the business to recognize that procurement as a function has a stake in our product lifecycle management. If we're seeing recommendations for product, I want to make sure that we as a team are defensible for the purchase orders that we're cutting. That if volumes don't really make sense in terms of replenishment, MOQs are too high and the prices, irrespective of the price, we're actually working with the sourcing teams and the go-to-market teams to either qualify that it's still a genuine requirement, or to go to the sourcing team to renegotiate prices and MOQs. So hopefully what I've done is demonstrated my passion for operations. And I'm hoping that that in itself kind of it replicates or echoes really the passion that our dealer network have.
L'approche de Prestige Motorcycle et de la passion dans le Dark Custom est tout simplement un juste retour à l'époque de la marque. Car on a toujours sollicité envers nous le côté un petit peu bad boys ou le côté un petit peu sombre qui sommeille en nous entre chaque client. Ma philosophie pour construire une moto avec un client, c'est aujourd'hui de lui faire plaisir, quand il descend dans son garage, on est le résultat de son rêve.
Le tout, c'est que le client soit satisfait pour qu'il puisse rouler avec sa moto. Que la moto soit harmonieuse, bien sûr, jolie, agréable à regarder.
Tous les ans, nous avons l'habitude de faire une course entre Filou et Benjamin, donc le hot rod de Filou et l'Harley de Benjamin.
Cette année, c'était sur une base de Harley-Davidson Street 750. Et on est parti sur une base de peinture qui rappelle le 750 XR des années 70-80. Je vais essayer de brider ma poignée pour lui laisser une chance, c'est le patron.
En fin de compte, on le laisse gagner parce que c'est le patron, on est obligé.
I love that ending. Thank you very much. That concludes my presentation.